All right, welcome everybody to another exciting episode of Under the Dome. I'm your host, Alan Ulrich, with my partner, Sean Williams. We are now a day away from the official start of free agency, but as everyone who has been following on Twitter and following on Facebook, any social media platform right now, this is the quote-unquote legal tampering period. So we're already getting a lot of news about trades, players coming and going, and unfortunately, it looks like one of the players that is going, the guy whose jersey I'm wearing tonight, Mark Ingram. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Some of the players that the Saints have to sign. They brought back Teddy Bridgewater. We'll talk about that, and we'll look at some stuff that the Saints should look at in free agency, probably in the next week or so, not these first couple of days out of the box. Anyway, I'm your host, Alan Ulrich. Sean, how you doing?
A lot better than the last time we hung out together. Feeling a little bit better, a little more healthy. I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight on Under the Dome, and invite you guys to subscribe to our show on iTunes and on YouTube. And we want to thank Fan First Productions for being our sponsor. And away we go. Free agency has not begun to begin yet, but everybody knows where everybody's going, and there's going to be a lot of new faces in new places next year, I hear.
Yeah, well, one of the things that Sean Payton said at the end of the 2018 season was, aside from the fact it was hard to accept how the game ended, the NFC Championship game ended, he also said the hardest part is he really liked that team, and that every year you have a new team. Even though you may have the same core players, you have a new team. We're already seeing this happen. You know, with Mark Ingram basically taking the money and running, possibly to go to Baltimore. Looks like the Saints offered him a deal much like the one he signed back in 2016 or 2015, a 4-year, $16 million deal. And he wanted closer to $8 million a year. The Saints weren't going to pay that. They said, see if you can find a deal like that. If you can find it, go for it. And he has. Baltimore yesterday, I believe, it said Baltimore had made an offer to Ingram. I think he came back to the Saints in good faith and said, this is what I've got. And the Saints said, well, good luck to you, because we can't make that. We can't meet that deal. It's not that I don't think they want to pay him that, because I know Mark was looking for $8 million a year. I think the Saints are looking at the long-term health of the franchise. You've got AB, Antonio Brown, going to the Raiders. He got a huge deal. Michael Thomas is a free agent next year. You're looking at the numbers I saw on Twitter yesterday were, $20 million a year kind of deal, quarterback type of money. You've got Alvin Kamara coming up the following year. You've got a lot of core players that are going to start showing up now looking for more money. So the Saints weren't going to commit a ton of money to the running back position, especially not a 30-year-old running back. And it's a shame, because Ingram's 90 yards away from breaking Deuce McAllister's all-time rushing record. He broke the touchdown record last year. He had a down year last year, had that 4-game suspension last year. So, it's really a shame. It bothers me as a Saints fan. I'm used to seeing guys not finish their career here, but I wanted Ingram to be one of those players who played his entire career in one city.
Yeah, I agree. And like you said, I can't really fault Ingram for taken advantage of what will likely prove to be the last opportunity that he has to make that big contract.
Mhm.
I don't think that he will even remotely have the same success in Baltimore as he does in New Orleans. And you and I have talked extensively about that. Uh, but by the same token, as good as Latavius Murray may be, he's not Ingram, and he doesn't have the chemistry, the rapport. And as you pointed out, he's not going to be the pass blocker that Ingram
Yeah.
was, the pass catcher that Ingram was. I'm not saying that the team will not be as good without Mark Ingram, but it's going to be different without Mark Ingram.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I look at some of the blocks that Ingram threw, and people kind of downplay that, but I went back and I was watching the Rams game, the regular season game the other day, and in a little flare out pass that Breeze threw to Zach Line. Didn't go for a score. They tackled him on the 1 yard line. But Dante Fowler came in clean, and was making a beeline for Drew Brees. And Ingram picked him up and did a head over heels block, cut him in half. You just watch Fowler, and even Troy Aikman, who was doing the game, went, whoa, as it happened. And all he wanted to talk about was the block. They were re-showing the play, and he's like, look at this block. That's the little unsung things. And the fact that those two guys, Ingram and Kamara, used to do those interviews, post-game interviews together. Ingram would give Kamara all kinds of props. He gets the 50th touchdown of his career. And the first words out of his mouth, yeah, but he's going to break it, pointing at Kamara. I mean, there was really a
camaraderie.
Thank you. I got my R's confused there. Not only between Ingram and Kamara, but also you saw on Twitter, Teron Armstead is upset. Cam Jordan is upset. They understand it's a business, but they said, it's a brotherhood too. What do all the players say that they miss the most about the game? It's not the practices. It's not the games themselves. It's the locker room. They miss the locker room. And Ingram had that personality that they really, really liked in the locker room. And that's a hard thing to replace. We as fans don't see that, but you need somebody in there to be Mr. Personality. And that seemed to have been his role. He was Mr. Personality. He made the guys laugh. He really, I think a lot of those videos that we saw this past season of them doing chopper style and things like that, I think it was Ingram that was probably filming a lot of that stuff, or Ingram instigating that stuff to get filmed, so it's going to be hard seeing without him. But, Latavius Murray, we'll see what he can do. We've gone through this before. Reggie Bush left not long after Mark Ingram was drafted. Deuce McAllister left in 2007. Well, 2008. He was injured in 2007. He left after the 2008 season. We didn't know where the rush is going to come from after him. Darren Sproles was traded in 2014. We brought in C.J. Spiller. So the Saints have done things like this. Chris Ivory was traded, and people were mad about him. They wanted Ingram traded, not Ivory. So it's going to be interesting to see where the Saints go from here. I don't think it's going to be strictly Murray. I think they do try and draft somebody, and I think they bring in a free agent or two, a undrafted free agent, to see what they got. It's not going to be the Alvin Kamara show. It can't be. You can't have that.
Alvin Kamara's he's not prepared for that role, and as you've alluded to, If you need proof of that, go back to the first 4 games of the season
Yeah.
last year.
Yeah.
The Saints struggled to have a run game, and that's nothing against Kamara by any stretch of the imagination. He's a dynamic player, but he is at his very best when he's splitting time.
Well, like I told somebody this morning on Facebook, we're sitting there talking about in free agency, the Saints need to acquire more weapons. They need another tight end. They need more receivers. Why would you want to get rid of a weapon, an offensive weapon in Ingram, and put more on Kamara and Thomas? Wasn't the problem that we had last year too much Kamara and Thomas? We need more. That's the only concern I really have. Can Latavius Murray pick up that slack? Can he be an effective runner in a platoon kind of situation, understanding and being able to do as many things as Ingram can do? We'll see. We'll see. But the financial reasons are the only reasons Ingram's leaving. It's not personal. It's not that the Saints don't want him. It's purely business. The other move that we heard was that Teddy Bridgewater's going to come back. My attitude about this is it was probably a foregone conclusion he was going to come back when you started to see the kind of moves they were making in free agency or trades prior to today. You saw Nick Foles go to Jacksonville. You saw the Dolphins hold on to number 17. Tannehill. Thank you. You saw the Redskins trade for a quarterback, right? Wasn't the Redskins who traded Case Keenum? Traded Denver for Case Keenum? Yeah. Yes. And Denver traded for Nick Foles.
Flacco.
Yeah, Flacco. Sorry. Foles went to Jacksonville. That's right. I'm trying to remember all these moves. So the number of starting jobs were shrinking greatly. So basically, all you had left was New Orleans and Miami, because the usual suspects, teams that you would expect to always be looking for quarterbacks, the Cleveland Browns, the New York Jets, the Arizona Cardinals, the usual suspects all have quarterbacks they drafted last year. And then there's the Kyler Murray situation. So there wasn't a whole lot of people interested in taking a guy like Bridgewater. So my understanding, Miami talked to Bridgewater about competing for the starting job.
And offered him more money.
And offered him more money to compete for a starting job. But he decided to stick with New Orleans, where he thinks he'll get a starting job probably next year. So, how do you feel about this?
Mixed emotions, actually. I'm not a big Bridgewater guy. Nothing against the guy. I don't see him as being the next man up in New Orleans. I don't. I never have. And his one chance at redemption for me was that last game of the year last year, and he underwhelmed terribly. Now, that's not to say that spending another year under a complete off season and another complete season behind Breeze, under Peyton, that he can't improve. And as it turns out, I really hope that he does now. But I don't.
Why did you freeze, Sean? We're still broadcasting. I hope your thing didn't just crap out. All right. Sean froze in mid sentence. He did tell me that his iPad was on very low battery, so I'm going to shoot him a message and see what happens here. Basically, a lot of stuff we were talking about with Teddy Bridgewater. Yep, that's exactly what happened. His iPad crapped out on him. He should be back in a second. All right. Basically, one of the things we're talking about with Bridgewater was, how much is the offense going to have to change to accommodate him? Supposedly not much. The issue, I think, with Bridgewater is his willingness to push the ball down the field and take the aggressive plays that Sean Payton and Drew Brees have liked to make. I don't see that coming out of him. That mentality of attack and go get them and be aggressive, I just don't see that. If I were to, I don't know, let's see. I'm sorry, I'm doing two things at one time here, guys. If I were to categorize from a movie the what I think Breeze and Peyton are versus a Teddy Bridgewater when they run the same offense, I would almost say Bridgewater or Breeze and Peyton are like Maverick in Top Gun. And Bridgewater is more like Iceman in Top Gun. If you remember the dynamics of that story, Iceman waited till things were perfect. It had to be textbook. It looked great in simulation, but in real life, it was always, it's not there, it's not there, it's not there. Whereas Maverick was aggressive, dangerous almost, took risks that he probably shouldn't take, and yet it worked out right for him. Except when Goose died, I know. So, in my mindset, I guess, I just kind of see Bridgewater is Iceman, and he needs a little bit of Maverick in him. He needs to loosen up. He needs to not wait till it's perfect, and he needs to be aggressive and push the ball down the field. Don't take the underneath stuff every time. Okay, the other thing that we had going on, a guy who the Saints need to sign, and we should see something hopefully in the next few days, is Will Lutz, our kicker. There's not a whole heck of a lot of movement on kickers right now, but I'm curious to see what the Saints do with him. Do they try and, I don't know, sign him to a long-term deal that's inexpensive? Or do they push, I don't know, lock him up to a bigger contract, much like a Thomas Morstead kind of contract from a few years ago? I don't know. You look at the history of this franchise under Sean Payton with kickers. You've got two kickers before Lutz who actually had any kind of career of any success. The first one being John Carney, the second one being, of course, John Casey, who filled in for. Okay, hang on. Sean's trying to join us. The three dots. Oh, great. Okay, Sean's having all kinds of problems right now. Okay. The John Casey, who of course replaced the suspended. Oh, come on. Excuse me, guys. I apologize for this. I'm getting over a bad cold myself, a minor case of the flu. Had a wonderful weekend. So my voice is shot, and I'm trying to get Sean back in the system. So I'm typing as well as talking to you guys and trying to maintain a coherent thought. Okay, let's see if we can get in now with that one. All right. Let's try this one more time. This is what happens usually when we're off air. Usually we're making obscene jokes while we're doing this too. Because he has more problems than the law allows. Okay, let's see if he's got it now. All right. Okay, let's see. Okay, anyways, I was saying, John Casey had to replace a suspended kicker. Oh, the Super Bowl hero. Come on now, and you can remember who this is now. Garrett Hartley. Garrett Hartley had been suspended for the 2011 season because he had tested positive for Adderall, and it was a year-long suspension, so it was his third violation. He claims he took Adderall at the time because he was driving home late at night, and he used it to keep himself awake because it's a stimulant. And, of course, that was flagged. So we had John Casey, who was 43 years old, come in and fill in for Garrett Hartley. And Casey, all he did was have one of the greatest kicker seasons a kicker for the Saints has ever had. But, of course, he was 43 years old. He was already semi-retired when the Saints called him up. So after the 2011 season, he went back to retirement. And Garrett Hartley was too inconsistent, and he would be gone not long after that. We had a revolving door of kickers, anywhere from Martin Gramatica to, what was that dude's name? Olindo Mare. We even drafted a kicker, and he did not do well. I don't think he even made the team. We had that kicker who ended up kicking for the Washington Redskins. We had, okay, let's see. Sean, did you get in? Oh, man. He takes him to the Play Store. Again, I apologize about this, guys. I don't know how to get his butt back in here. Let's see. There he is.
I don't know for how long he is, but he is about to.
Oh, I've been rambling for about 5 minutes while I'm trying to talk to you about kickers. So you know I'm desperate for information. I was talking about the fact that you know the only other player that's really critical to the Saints to re-sign is going to be Will Lutz. and I was kind of going through the list of kickers. The only consistent kickers we had here were John Carney, and of course the one season that we had John Casey to replace suspended Garrett Hartley. But in the meantime, we just cycle through so many kickers that Will Lutz has been a blessing because he's kind of made this not only a pillar of stability, but he's also been very accurate, a great kickoff guy. We've taken the kickoffs back away from Thomas Morstead, so we're starting to see a lot more. Can you hear everything I'm saying?
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay.
I'm trying to work through this problem. Go right ahead.
Okay, all right. I just want to make sure I'm not just talking to dead air. But anyway, so it's really important that we sign this guy, especially with the problems people have had making extra points, making field goals. If you watch any of the games this past season, everywhere from what happened to Cleveland, what happened to Tampa,
Baltimore.
We won that game because the most accurate kicker in the league misses an extra point. It's critical that we sign this guy. Yes, I know Okafor is somebody that we're going to need to talk about bringing back. You've got some questions about what do we do for a safety? What do we do for our nickel cornerback? So, those are some of the positions, but I think the Saints are going to focus more on signing those guys than they will bring in other players. Latavius Murray is going to be an outlier in this regard. I think they're mostly going to focus on re-signing the guys they need to re-sign. Watch the free agent market. Make sure they don't overpay again, because if you look at some of these contracts that are flying around right now, with some of these players, it's ridiculous. You're paying guys just unbelievable money that are not, difference makers as a franchise is the word I'm looking for.
It's just like the draft. You're overdrafting guys because you're scared of being left out in the cold in the mix.
Well, what Kansas City paid the Honey Badger $14 million a season for a guy who is more of a hybrid cornerback safety. He's not. You've got an Eric Berry on your team already. And yeah, you do need a big nickel formation because so many teams spread you out with passing attacks. But Tyrann Mathieu is not going to he's not a difference maker. He doesn't sack the quarterback. He's not going to make you a better defense all by himself. He's not a Khalil Mack. He is a part that has to fit into an overall defense. But they're paying outrageous money. And we just saw the Cleveland Browns made a move. Odell Beckham is leaving New York and joining his former LSU teammate, Jarvis Landry, in Cleveland. So you've got Beckham, Landry, Baker Mayfield, and Nick Chubb all on that team. It's going to be an interesting offense to watch. It's a lot of egos, too.
Yeah, well, Odell had a good quarterback in
Eli Manning. Eli. Yeah.
He thrived for 1 year, and then Cinderella lost her slipper, and the kicking net whipped his ass on the sidelines, and a couple of times actually. It all goes back to the game that he had with Josh Norman.
Yeah.
It all goes back to that. When every defensive back in this league that was going to line up on you saw they could get in your head.
Yeah.
the whole landscape changes for you. So, what's he going to do in Cleveland? That remains to be seen. I I think with a quarterback like Baker Mayfield, the the scope is going to be wide open on him. Uh, Jarvis Landry is a very good receiver, but he wasn't Odell Beckham. Uh, so this gives them an immediate downfield threat, uh, and
Oh no, not again. That's unbelievable. I was just about ready to start asking about Bridgewater too. I can't believe this. Poor Sean. This is not. This is his device. It's not his internet connection or anything like that, because all that stuff is strong, but he is just dropping out on me. And I don't know why. Other than the fact that his iPad was down to nothing as far as a charge. I get where he's going with this. I hear you, Sean. I hear you. You know, the thing he has to learn how to do in Cleveland is he has to learn how to not read his own press clippings, push plays that don't work behind him, and just keep moving forward, and realize that he doesn't have to make Sports Center highlights every play. All right. One of the things that we were going to talk about too, and we were going to do this last week, and we ran out of time. We talked about the offensive needs. I'm sorry, we were talking about the biggest needs, and we had a ranking. And Sean's ranking was tight end, cornerback, quarterback, offensive line, and wide receiver. And the last things that we talked about last week were the quarterback position. Well, the quarterback position has been addressed. I am still intrigued by Sam Rosen possibly being traded because the Cardinals are insane and they're in love with Kyler Murray. But with bringing back Bridgewater, the Saints are probably pushing themselves out of that mix. And the only reason why I was even remotely interested in Rosen is because you've got a 3-year deal with a rookie contract. Okay, Drew Brees counts towards $33 million towards this year's cap alone. With a Rosen on the roster as your backup, you kind of have time to save a bunch of money, because let's just say, for the sake of argument, Drew Brees retires after the 2019 season. You save a bunch of money, and you now are bringing in. Let's make sure he's not okay. See if he's coming back. All right, let me see if I can do this. This thing's always funny. See if that works. Anyway, what I was saying was, you save a bunch of money by paying a quarterback next to nothing, and it frees up your cap to start paying not only your Michael Thomas's, your Alvin Kamara's, and players like that, Marshawn Lattimore's, but also allows you to be more active in free agency. But one of the reasons why I've been talking about teams like Cleveland with Odell Beckham is because in the Jets, if you're noticing, the teams that are the most active right now in free agency are the ones that have the most money to spend. Sean, are you with us?
Yes.
Okay.
La
Is
la.
it your, is it your device, or is it okay?
Yeah.
Your laptop.
We're on a different device now, so
Okay. All right.
okay. What did I miss?
Well, I was basically kind of going back to the list we had last week and talking about free agency needs, and we kind of touched on with Bridgewater coming back, and I was talking a little bit about Rosen, the temptation to make the trade for Rosen, not because of you just think he's that much better of a quarterback, but because you get that rookie contract, and you have 3 years of that rookie contract, where Drew Brees counts towards 33 million towards his cap for this year alone. With a Josh Rosen, you've got what $2 million contracts the next 3 years. That frees up a ton of money in free agency for you to not only spend on your core young players that are coming up, the Michael Thomases, the Alvin Kamara's, players like that, but also to get other players, these big name players. I say, if you look at the teams that are making the most moves right now in free agency, it's teams that have the most cap room because they don't have a franchise quarterback, or they got a franchise quarterback on a rookie deal. They don't have a lot of money tied up in key players, so they have money to spend. Some of it's foolish money, but they still have that money to spend. I mean, you look at Kansas City. You've got a quarterback on their rookie deal. You don't have a running back anymore. They got rid of him. But Tyreek Hill is under a cheap contract. I believe Kelsey is still under a cheap contract. He's not under a big contract right now.
I don't think he is either.
No, so that gives a team like the Chiefs a lot of money to play with. Whereas with the Saints, your top 3 players on the roster who take up the bulk of your cap are Drew Brees, Cameron Jordan, and Teron Armstead. Brees is $33 million. Cameron Jordan, I think, is $16 million, and Teron Armstead's $15 million. So that's $63 million, $64 million. Let's just round up. Tied up in 3 players out of what, $180 million salary cap just for this year, that figure. So, and we haven't even talked about Andres Pete and his $9.25 million. So when you have a small group of players who aren't counting that much towards the cap, your core, and you've got a lot more money to spend. But if your small group of players eat up the bulk of your cap because you've got good players that you have to pay because they're veteran players, then you're kind of limited in free agency. So that's why I said Rosen sounded appealing, because Bridgewater, we don't know what his numbers are going to be, but I guarantee it's not going to be as low as Rosen's number. It's probably going to be anywhere from $15 to $20 million, for Bridgewater. I don't know how it's going to break down by cap years, but that's still more money than what you would pay a rookie. So that's why that was appealing.
That's ironic that you spend $20 million for a quarterback you hope never gets on the field.
Well, but you're kind of spending money though because you're planning for the future. You're assuming that he is going to be a starter for you. This is not a Mark Brunell, Chase Daniel, even Taysom Hill kind of situation where you got you're paying, or Luke McCown, you're paying backup money. You're paying money to a guy that you are going to anticipate is going to be your starter at some point. And we don't know the specific behind this contract yet. I'm just guessing.
Yeah.
But that's the appeal of Rosen.
You have the database. Can you look up for me real quick where we are contract wise with Warford and with the center. I drawing a
Oh,
blank.
Unger.
Unger, yeah,
Okay, Unger is number 4, I think, on the Saints top 5. Um, no, Warford is number 4. Warford's cap number is 10 million, 10.6 million. Andres Pete is 9.625, and Max Unger is 8.7 million. So that's you've got 4 your offensive linemen, all counting towards your cap. That's eating up the bulk of your cap. 1 defensive lineman and a quarterback. And just for the record, Demario Davis is number 7 at 8.5 million. Cannon Meredith is 6.4 million. AJ Klein is 6. Patrick Robertson 5.35. Thomas Morstead 4.250. Then you get to the rookie contracts: Marshawn Lattimore, Sheldon Rankins, Ted Ginn's actually cheaper than those 2 guys. Marcus Davenport, Eli Apple, who is still operating off of his rookie contract, actually. So yeah, that you've got a lot of money tied up in the offensive line. The only one who's not counting big time towards your cap is Ryan Ramczyk, who's only 2.425 because he's only in the second year of his deal. Yeah. His number will balloon as he gets towards the end of his deal because he's a first-round pick. They're going to pick up his fifth-year option. That's going to make his number go up. But 4 of your 5 offensive linemen eat up the bulk of your cap. And just for history's sake, your dead money leader is still Kobe Fleener, 3.43 million. This is his last year. He counts against the cap.
At least it's not what it was 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah.
When we paid a running back tens of thousands of dollars for every carry that he had as a New Orleans Saint.
Hey, that's the danger of Latavius Murray. A lot of people you know what? We're going to be fine without Ingram because we can make any running back work in the system besides Kamara as a starter. Well, we brought C.J. Spiller in because we traded Marcus. We did want to pay another $4 million to Darren Sproles because we thought he was over the hill. So we bring in C.J. Spiller, who's supposed to be a younger Sproles type of player, and look what happened. And that's why you had the issue you had. It's always a gamble. Bringing in a guy who was productive in one system, put him in your system, it may or may not work. I'm not saying that's going to happen with Latavius Murray, but it's a tale of caution. Let's see. For those who are really curious, the cheap people are mainly your practice squad people, all the cheap players. Your Dan Arnold's, Simi Cobbs, JT Barrett. Yeah, that's the bottom of your roster.
He's still here.
JT Barrett. They cut him, bring him back. I think he is approaching. What was his name? Come on.
Offensive lineman.
The offensive lineman,
came from the Raiders.
Yeah.
Golly, I cannot believe I can't remember his name. As many times as that notification came up on my phone.
Yep.
Oh.
They would cut him and re-sign him. Well, they cut this guy and bring him back, depending on what they need on the practice squad. So that's what happens when you live in the bottom of the roster.
Get better.
Yeah. Okay.
Improve your stand-in by improving your standing.
Yeah. So, one of the things that's going to have to be addressed, talking about the offensive line, that's the reason why I even brought it up, is the Andres Pete contract. Obviously, with 4 of the 5 guys making so much money, it's not just Pete who is the quote-unquote problem, but he's got the easiest number to fool with, because if you were to trade or cut Pete, you would get the entire amount back. You would not have any dead money. And that's what makes him an appealing target. I don't want to see Pete get traded or cut. This is for the same reason I didn't want to see Ingram leave. I don't want Pete to leave because I don't want to see the chemistry upset. With an offensive line, it's so important that you've got the same 5 guys starting and gelling together. We saw the stories about with Zach Strief and Jari Evans, how they both kind of, one word between the two of them, they understood what needed to be done. They were just that in sync. And then with Armstead, with the inability to trust him to stay healthy, a guy like Pete who can play guard and tackle doesn't disrupt your offense that much to move him in and out, and it saves you roster spots where you don't have to go heavy, where you have to have a tackle, a guard, and a center. You can have guys you can cross-train and play multiple positions. That's where he's valuable. You just need to get that cap number down. My way is to extend him. He can get more money up front with a signing bonus, and you just prorate that signing bonus over the length of the contract. You keep the core intact. He's a young enough player that he can improve. We'll see what happens from there.
He's still on his rookie deal as of now, though, isn't
he? He's in the 5th year. That's why it's so big this year. Because typically the rookie contracts balloon, especially the way Mickey Loomis writes them. They balloon at the end of the deal, to keep the low number in the first half when you're usually tied up against the cap, because they're anticipating the cap growing year after year. So that's why Drew Brees is up to $33 million this year, because you're pushing as much of the possible dead money to the end of the cap, not the front half of the contract.
Yeah.
The last thing that you had on there is as a need, and I'm sorry, we were going through so many different things. Because I'm just going through the different stuff that we were going to talk about last week. Wide receiver as one of the needs of free agency. Yes. We've seen some wide receivers moving right now. But we've seen them get paid a lot of money. I think Cole Beasley got $20 million. Oh, come on. I'm drawing a blank on these people because I had this up earlier. Okay. I'm sorry about this, guys. Antonio Brown kind of screwed up the market for everybody with him getting a lot of money. But, okay. Yeah, you saw John Brown get 3 years, $27 million to go from the Ravens to the Bills. Adam Humphries got $36 million, 4 years to go from the Bucs to the Titans. That was somebody Saints fans wanted. And Jamison Crowder is going to the Jets. And I could have sworn I saw he's like $24 million. And Cole Beasley's $29 million, 4 years. So, yeah, that's a lot of money, especially for a franchise, and I'm talking about the Saints now, who don't typically give receivers a lot of money. The one who's going to break that, obviously, is going to end up being Michael Thomas. Where do you see the Saints going in free agency then?
To be honest, it'll it won't be for a major name like your OBJ, like your Antonio, and all you people that bought into that garbage that Antonio Brown was coming to New Orleans should be ashamed of yourselves. Uh,
Oh yeah, Devin Funches went over to the Colts for a 1-year deal. And it was like $14 million.
yeah. Uh, I I don't really look for them unless they add something in the draft
Mm-hmm.
in a late round player. I don't really look for them to upgrade at wide receiver,
Well,
and that's well, I say that now. That's with the caveat that rehab goes well and they uh they make the offer to bring Dez back.
well, my attitude with Dez is going to be there in June, July, August, September. There's no rush to sign a guy like Dez Bryant. No one's going to want him. You can sign him at any time. The reason why we got him in the first place is because nobody wanted him.
Yeah,
He's a guy who cannot get separation. Um, he's a guy who has clearly lost a step, maybe a step and a half now that he's torn his Achilles and he's recovering from that. He's an old 30-year-old.
yeah,
You've got some players that are young 30-year-olds, like this guy here, Mark Ingram, is a young 30-year-old. Dez has got a lot of wear on his tires. And, that's one of the reasons why nobody wanted to touch him. But in the same breath, if the Saints go and get a free agent receiver, I can see them looking at, here's a couple of 30-year-olds, but they've got history with the Saints. A Golden Tate or a Michael Crabtree, guys that they probably think have a little more tread on the tires, that are veteran receivers who can still find ways to create separation and get open. But I think they are targeting a speed receiver in that second round with that second round pick. And that's really what they want to do, that they may sign somebody but not give a lot of money to a receiver, which is unfortunate because I really like this guy, Terrell Williams, out of the Chargers. He's a 6'4", 250 fast receiver. I'm sorry, at 250, 205. Sorry, 205, not 250. 6'4", 205. He's got he had a 1,000-yard campaign a couple of years ago. He's only 27 years old. He doesn't have a lot of wear on him. He was really the third receiver in San Diego. He could really thrive maybe as a number 2 guy. And one other guy I think that the Saints should show some interest in, just as a pure speed guy, is Philip Dorsett from the Patriots.
yeah,
He was somebody that that Sean Payton really, really liked coming out of the draft. You can do some things with him, much like you did with Brandon Cooks. He's short like Brandon Cooks. But I'm curious to see, I think a guy like him, not as a big time target, but somebody who could play the slot and also occasionally play the 2. That would be interesting to see what Coach CJ could do with a guy like him. Because the biggest problem you have with him is consistency of catching the ball, which is what CJ drills people on. So,
well, I mean, look what he did with Ginn.
yeah, exactly. And Ginn is in his final year of his deal. I thought that us losing speed, Ginn's speed, really hurt in that latter half of the season when we started playing the Dallas Cowboys, the Tampa Bay Bucks, Carolina, Pittsburgh, and in the playoffs. I thought that's one of the things that happened with us. We lost that guy who could take the top of defenses off.
Yeah, I agree.
Um,
Well, thank everybody for joining us tonight. It's time for me to go to my other job.
yeah. Well, I'm sorry you had so many problems tonight, Sean.
We'll get it. We'll get it right. Just
Well,
gotta.
the real free agency starts tomorrow. That's where we really start seeing things move around, and I really expect the Saints to make a big move on a defensive tackle soon. I'll be surprised if they don't. They have to get a defensive tackle. That's the thing to watch for, and re-signing our kicker. I mean, that's the two things. That's two things I'm looking for in the first week and a half of free agency.
I don't see Will Lutz going anywhere. Not that he won't have the opportunity, but all the struggles that this team had, all those 7-9 seasons, the struggles that we had with kickers, going all the way back to the downfall of Garrett Hartley. Peyton's not going to let anything happen to Lutz, regardless of what it takes. I just can't see that happening.
Right.
Thank you guys for joining us. We love you guys. As always, reach out to us. Let us know what you like, what you didn't like. We thank Fan First Productions for sponsoring us. Also, on a personal note, if you're in Northeast Louisiana Saturday night, come and see the Coon-Ass Carnival at the AmVets in Monroe, Louisiana. Saturday night, probably begin around 9 p.m. and we'll be Echo Thieves, I think, is the name of the group that'll be opening for us. And it's going to be our first headlining gig in our hometown. So we invite everybody to come out and join us. Thank you guys so much for being a part of what we do. We love you. And with that, it's over to my ride or die, Mr. Allen Ulrich.
There you go. I think we need a video of these concerts to be put on our YouTube page. Not just our YouTube page, but also our Facebook page, our Twitter page, because I think people really need to see you singing.
Well, oddly enough, we do have a song in the set list that I sing. It's "Knocking on Heaven's Door."
The Motley Crue version, not the Bob Dylan version, right?
Guns and Roses.
Guns and Roses. I should know better.
There's some circles you could start a fight by saying that.
That is true. That is true.
Actually, it's kind of a hybrid between the two.
Okay.
It's interesting.
I got you. No, hey,
I'll see what I can do about getting a good recording.
Keep living the dream. All right, guys. Thank you all for joining us. And I apologize for the technical problems that we had going on today. I promise you we'll get better at this stuff. Just sometimes things can't be helped. And Sean warned me before the show even started that his device may die on him. So did it once, not just once, but twice. So we'll get his thoughts on Teddy Bridgewater in more detail next week. In the meantime, Thank you guys for joining us, and we'll see you next time on Under the Dome. Good night, everybody.